Okay, so here we are in weed biology and identification. And the first thing I'd like you to do, although I have the syllabus up here right now, is you've got a sheet of paper, a single sheet of paper. Hopefully you filled it out with your name, address, email, and your cell phone. And what I'm going to do is I will collect those when you leave today. And what I'm going to do is tomorrow then we'll assign weed presses. Okay, so that just, so I know I put a number with your thing, because the weed presses are worth like 75 bucks or so. So you get assigned a press for nothing, and I just have to make sure at the end of the quarter I get it back. So it's even harder when I mail them out to the kids across the country. We've got one student in North Dakota. So I don't know whether I'm mailing her a press or not, because we're going to decide, because she will never get out of snow the whole time we're this quarter. So I've got to decide on something else for her. Matt and I will work on that, and we may adjust this a little bit too. So just know that nothing is totally set in stone in this class because it's in the winter, so we could shift it a little bit, but we are going to learn all the weeds. Okay, whether we do it by presses and pictures or how we do it, we will get through it and learn some of the control measures as well. Okay, so if you'll fill out that sheet and hand it to me before you leave today, that'd be good. All right, so let's look at the syllabus. And you'll see up there I've got the winter quarter of 2015, so I'm a little bit behind on that, but it hasn't changed the syllabus that much. Okay, there's a little bit of difference in the weed collections, but you can see that my office phone is up there, 509-527-4225. I'm up in 1206, so if you were upstairs at 1205, just go up the stairs on the first door on the right. Okay, and my door will usually be open if I'm in there. Sometimes I close the door, just knock, but my schedule's on the door. You can see my email is up here, gwenstocky@wwcc.edu. This is a 5-credit course, and it's going to be lecture and hands-on in here. We'll have times when we're going to just be studying samples. I'll have it all set up. Okay. Have people looked for your textbook over in the bookstore yet? You will want it. They haven't. This is the copy you'll probably see over there. There's a tan version as well if you get a used copy from somebody. I don't care which copy you have. Okay, the page numbers might be off a little bit, so we'll just have to adjust that when we go through things, but don't worry about it. I would suggest you get this. This is up online through the Weed Science Society of America, but I find that students like to put little notes in the book, and go through it and look at things rather than just dealing with an online version. Okay, so this should be in the bookstore, and if you don't want to keep it, obviously there should be some used ones over there. Matt will be teaching this course in the spring, so other people will be picking it up if you want to sell it back. Okay, so don't worry, but it's the same book, same thing. So we try to do that so you guys aren't out money. Okay, so let's just move this here. So this is as I move it up, an introductory course in weed science. Has anybody taken any weeds before at all? So basically you've had Matt's, have you had any of Matt's botany, his more anatomy and morphology at all? If you've had that, that'll help you with identification. If you haven't, then we'll have to go through a few terms for the rest of you on identification. Thank you, ma'am. So that will be fine. I don't think it'll hurt you on that. We can look at some sprayer applications, calculations, but basically that really gets taken care of in some other classes that we offer here too. If somebody wants to look at that, we can go through that if you don't get it anywhere else. So we can, basically I'm pretty flexible in how we do this. But we will be going through some of the, I must have taken it back upstairs. We have some resources up here on some of the solutions guide, and of course I'm too short to reach that. Can you grab that one manual? There's 2 of them upstairs. I'll bring them down from 1205 and to get that packet too. Okay, so basically we've got the 2017 weed handbook hasn't come out yet, but I'll have to, I don't know where the handbook, I'll bring the 2 that are upstairs. It hasn't changed a lot. I do the turf section for the weed handbook, so I do go through that, but this has all the crops, so this will give you, if you want to look at this, I keep it for a free reference. This is all up online too through WSU. It goes through WSU, Idaho, and Oregon as well. So Oregon, Washington, and Idaho as far as for control measures and products, and so that's a good message for that. And then for the turf guys, I've got some other references here too that I have. So we've got a mixture of everybody in here. So we'll look at different crops. So I just want to make sure that if you're looking for something specific for a specific crop that you're working with, that you have those references. Okay, so that we can go through that. Okay, so location all, what does that mean? That's kind of ambiguous, isn't it? Well, we're here. Okay, so what we're going to do is tomorrow I'll start in with the PowerPoint, and we'll talk about what weed science is and look at some things, and we'll do a little bit of morphology and taxonomy, just a review as we go through. We'll also cover the classification, identification, and the spread of weeds. So we'll have terminology for annuals, biennials, winter annuals, perennials. We have some that spread by perennials that spread by rhizomes, some perennials that spread by tubers. Okay, and that kind of thing can help you as you're looking at this weed, as the weeds, is how and when you're going to control it. Okay, if it's an annual, you're going to control it, obviously, hopefully before it seeds out, because annuals produce a lot of seeds to stay alive. Okay, so as we look at the life cycles, that'll help you understand control measures, because you don't want to be wasting. If you've made a decision that you're going to try to put out a product to control something, you certainly don't want to put it out at a time when it's not the right time to do it, do you? Okay, because we have enough flack about using products anyway, so we want to make sure. And it's and when you have to follow the label is the law. All of you have probably taken AGPR 140, so it's really important to do that type of thing. Okay, so what you're going to get when you finish up with here, I hope, is identifying when a plant is a weed and not a weed. Okay, if you don't think it's out of place, it's probably not a weed. You're going to be able to look at when you control a weed. You may not know the exact cost because the costs change as we go into newer and newer products. What's happening is that they're putting more time and effort to it, and it takes millions of dollars to produce a new product. And just for an example, with the new product, the new weed control that I bought a quart sample. Okay, it was $180 for a quart. Okay, but that'll cover 8 acres. Okay, so what's looking at it may be very expensive, but I'm using like 15 mils, for a very small area. And one of the advantages as we look at these for controlling is this particular weed control works very well in cool temperatures. So I can put it out late in the fall, if I get going. And one of the weeds that I'm more concerned about, since I'm a turf grass person, I've got my PhD in turf. Basically, this particular product, dandelions won't bloom in the spring if I spray them in the fall. So if I have a lawn care business, for me, that means a lot, because if the dandelion doesn't bloom, do you think the customer's going to call me? No, they call me when they bloom. So that gives the people in the field another 3 weeks to get to their lawn, or something like that. So it really makes a big difference in some of these things. But it's not a cheap solution, but it's one of those products as well, when I look at it, that is fairly non-toxic. Okay, I wouldn't want to drink it, okay, because they are meant to kill weeds. I'm not going to drink it, but it's got like a LD50 of almost 5,000. Okay, so very low toxicity. Okay, so we're going to start looking at leaf arrangements, veination patterns, what's on the margin, type of leaf attachment. Okay, because you're going to have to be trying to look and identify this weed from another. Okay, how many people think all grasses look the same? No, nobody does? Even when you look at them, I used to think that. Here I am with that, and you can look at, there's going to be weeds that look very similar. So you'll have to pick out whether it's got hairs, whether it's purplish, whether it's an annual, whether it's a perennial, all those type of things. Okay, and you're going to put them into their family based on external morphology. And we can look at some of the crop plants and weeds, which are members of the same taxonomic family. What does that mean to us? If they're in the same family, what do you think that might mean about weed control? Probably difficult. Okay, so that's where I've got to when I look at this, we'll see that that's going to involve timing. Okay, probably making sure I control that weed before I plant, or finding something that's selective. So that's going to play a big part in how I work with this. Okay, so I already talked about when you identify each weed, when you make your collection, you're going to tell me whether it's a winter annual, a summer annual. This is under point G here, biennial, perennial. Okay, and that will go on your identification. And when we have quizzes, that's the same type of thing. You have to tell me what its life cycle is, and then you also need to tell me how does it disperse. Does it disperse by seed? Does it spread by rhizomes or stolons? Okay. So we need to look at that, because that will make a big difference. And which weeds spread by sexual or asexual when given external structure in class. So I may just give you, a piece of the plant and have you identify it. So, but it would have something that would be very specific to it. I also will ask you to identify seeds. Okay, so we'll look at them under the scope. And some of them are very distinctive, okay, as far as which seed types. And I know you say, well, I'm never going to look at that, but sometimes it comes in handy when you're looking at some of these plants to look at the seed types. Okay, so by looking at all this, it should help us figure out which control method to use, whether I can use biological, which is kind of hard in some areas. We try to do as much as we can, but that's a fairly a recent control method, but we try to do that. Maybe it means I'm going to physically destroy them by plowing something under, and then chemical would be my last resort if it can fit in, and then identify which one's appropriate. Okay, as we look at this will, by looking at these weeds, it'll help us to develop an integrated control program. Okay, how do I work through the season with this and do it in the most economical fashion? Okay, because if I've got a bunch of weeds but I'm going to harvest tomorrow, does it make sense to control them? No. Okay, so common sense is in here too, like cents as in dollars and cents as in smarts as well. We will look at some of the mode of actions, and that should say not a pedicide but a pesticide. So how it works is going to make a big difference in how I apply it, when I apply it. And, if I'm looking at crops that I could be eating, there's on the label it'll tell me, okay, I can't spray it within 48 hours, or maybe it takes 2 weeks before I can put cows back on it or something like that. All right, or if I'm harvesting grapes, I can't use this at this point, or it's dangerous on here. So that'll be another reason why we'd look at that. When we're looking at the products in these handbooks, we can look at the type of formulation it is. I already said something about mode of action. If we need to look at components of sprayers, we can, if you haven't had that someplace else, if you want to do that. I'm trying not to overlap too much with the other classes. Safe handling, I think we can do that. Oops, it's not moving here. There we go. And also we're going to be talking about how we might apply some of these weed control products to reduce the possibility of resistance. Because if we keep using the same product, then the weed can build up resistance, and then we no longer have that control method to use. Okay. Okay, we're going to have at least 2 lecture exams. We could split it up into more. Actually, with the final exam, we have that as well, so that'll fit into there, so that actually is 3. At least 5 identification quizzes. And we'll have an identification final as well. Usually what I do with that is if you've gotten good grades on everything else, I may make the identification final optional, but you do have a written final as well that you have to take. Okay, so that's for that. We'll discuss that as we get going through on that. Again, my grading scale is no different than anybody else's. So your lecture exams should balance out your quizzes. The sample collection is the weed collection that you have to make, and I will give you a handout tomorrow on that when we hand out our weed presses and stuff like that. Okay, so hang on, let me see. And this just goes, your class outline goes through the other things that we're going to cover here. So that pretty much will go through the syllabus for the course. So let me close this particular handout here. And let's go into, I set up everything usually, if you follow the modules, I'll have it in weeks. So that's probably the best way to follow me. If you're going to be looking on Canvas, if you miss something, okay, I'm going to go in here and there's a handout for the weed collection. I'll just print that out and give it to you tomorrow. But every reference that you need will be up on Canvas, so that should help you a lot. Everybody's used Canvas? Okay, I figured you had, so that's good. So that'll help a lot. Okay, your list that I just handed out to you is also up on Canvas. Open up here. Okay. So let's just look at the first page here. Oh, come on, thing. Oops. I'll just move this over. Okay, so if we just look at the first weed that we have here, usually, and they've all got numbers next to them. I've set this up differently than Matt's weed list. They're the same weeds, but I've put them in a different order from when they appear in the winter. Okay, so the way these are set up is how we studied them last year. And I probably will keep it that way, and we'll figure out, as we go, how we can look at these things. But if we look at wild carrot, you see we've got the common name there. We've got the Latin name, Daucus carota. Okay, if we look at that, it can reproduce by either plant or seed. Okay, and then what I will do each week is I will pick out 10 weeds, and I will go through, I will put the page numbers on there. You can turn to them in your book, and we'll go through the characteristics. So we write them all down, because I know I could just print out a whole thing for you, but I think you remember it better if you write it down. Okay, and a lot of people will make study cards for it. As we look at this, if this will be, we can look and see whether it's an annual, perennial, biennial, whatever the wild carrot is as we go through here. And a lot of people put little notes in their books. I've seen them color code it with stickies, so that all the annuals that we study are in yellow or whatever, on their book, and they go through and put them together and make lists of them. But it'll be up to you to decide how you want to remember it the best. Okay, so we'll use that. So you see then, what we have to do is I'll give you identifying characteristics about the plant and the seed, and I will tell you what page it's on in the book, and then we'll go through the life cycle and how it spreads. So can you see how that's going to help you further on to identify them and look at control measures? If you know when it's going to germinate and you know how it's going to spread, that'll help you to either prevent it from getting in there or to get it out so it's not a problem and doesn't compete with the crop that you're trying to grow. Because that's our main thing, is we want to produce as much as we can of what we're working with. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, I don't think I need to go through all these today. So are there any questions on anything that we might be doing this quarter? I'm just going to go ahead and shut this down.